Okay, so scene 1, first I turn on the camera, check. Then check the microphone, Then I have no cues until scene 2. Great. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour.
Alrighty friends, we are back with yet another episode of the Almost Complete Guide to Stage Management, and this week we are talking about run sheets, also known as deck sheets or scene shift plots or shift plots or scene plots or shift sheets or any number of names. But if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kent and you are watching Half Hour Call, where we're dedicated to shining the spotlight on technical theater. So if you want how-to videos, interviews with industry leaders, or general theater updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss another video. A run sheet is essentially a list of cues in order that people execute during the show. This can include things like carpenters, props, fly rail, automation, effects, costumes, even actors that move props or set pieces. It tells you when the thing happens, what the thing is, who does the thing, and where the thing happens. As an overgeneralization, the more complicated that a show is, the more likely the run sheet is going to be a collaboration between the entire stage management team. For simpler shows, especially ones without automation or flies, it'll tend to fall more to the ASMs. Creating a solid Plan A version of the run sheet before you get into tech, knowing full well that it will evolve and change as you go through the process, can be a lifesaver when trying to get things started. Clear and concise communication through this document will allow people that are not familiar with the show to hit the ground running and operate with some sense of autonomy instead of relying on the assistant stage managers for everything. Let's start off with the master run sheet. First things first, don't forget that this document is going to be used in the dark, backstage, during the show. So having a font size that's fairly large, despite the amount of information that's going to be on this document, is fairly important. This is yet another table-based piece of paperwork that can be made successfully in either Microsoft Word or Excel. I like to use Excel simply because the filter function allows you to automatically create the individual department's run sheets from a single master run sheet, rather than having to create different versions and manually delete each row as you try to distribute the information. There are as many different run sheet templates as there are stage managers, but my go-to starts with a column for page number that frankly gets left blank until I'm making the archival copy, followed by columns for who, where, action, cue, and notes. To me, this is the most function-minded order, giving me the most important information first. As a crew member, I can skim for my name or my track, then see where I need to be to do the cue, what the thing is, when the thing is going to happen, and any additional details that I need after. Quick note, this is what I do for fairly simple shows where I don't plan on separating the run sheet out into the individual departments. If I were going to do that, I would include a department column between page number and who, so that way I can use the filter function much easier. And for significantly more complicated shows, I would want to switch cue and action so that the thing being called by the stage manager or the cue light that the person is anticipating turning off would be more prominent than the action, so that way they can follow along much more easily. In this particular example, it was not a super complicated show and the crew members were already very familiar with the show, so having the details about the action more prominent was more important for them. Always consider the needs of your show and your team when considering how to make this document. I merge cells to make a heading for every scene, song, or other landmark throughout the show, and until the show is frozen, I like to add lots and lots of white space to add in additional cues, to write notes, anything that the technicians might need during tech. As we begin to add content, one last formatting tidbit to keep in mind is pagination. Make sure you're considering when page turns occur so that there's not a page turn in the middle of a super complicated cue sequence. Speaking of content, so what actually gets included in this document? Well, generally speaking, everything that happens on the deck from the proscenium back. So that means prop handoffs, fly rail cues, set changes, automation, special effects, flashlighting exits, paging curtains, all of it gets included in this document. Sometimes costume cues go on this document, but in my experience, it's usually only quick changes that are happening like in the booths that are on the deck. Also, lighting and sound cues are generally not included because that would make the document way too long, and it's kind of redundant since those designers usually create their own cue lists anyway. As you can probably imagine, this document can get very complicated very quickly, so it's important to keep in mind that it is being used backstage during the actual run of the show, so being super concise with your language is very important here. It's helpful to keep in mind that the question that the run sheet is answering is who does what when. And more specifically, the question is probably, oh crap, what do I do next? But you get the point. Think about the content of the run sheet very much the same as the content of the preset checklist. If you missed that video, check it out here. But it's super important for especially carpenters and props that you're using language that does not rely on a knowledge of the show. For each action, many stage managers will start with a capitalized action word. Some of the most commonly used action words include set and strike, to place or remove a set piece, prop, or costume piece. Handoff and catch, to give a prop to an actor and take a prop from an actor, respectively. Move, which is to relocate a set piece or prop on stage, or track, which is to relocate a set piece or prop backstage. And while assistant stage managers should not be considered part of the run crew because they're assistant stage managers, they will probably still have a few cues on the run sheet. This will include things like page to move a curtain out of the way, flashlight to shine light for an exit or for a quick crossover or on a tripping hazard or things that need more light. Clear for when the deck stage manager tells the calling stage manager that the thing is out of the way of the other thing. So an actor is out of the way of a set piece that is flying in, or the automation is clear for the curtain to come down. And finally, check or confirm for making sure actors are ready for their entrances or they're at places at the top of an act. And then, in addition to the action word, what is the minimum amount of information you need to convey in order for the cue to be executed correctly? Do we need set the wooden bench downstage right on the pink spikes next to the fluffy chair? Or can we just put set bench downstage right parentheses pink? The way I create run sheets, each cue gets their own row, but each row may contain several actions. For example, a complex scene change that only includes carpenters may only be a single cue, but have multiple actions that need to be taken in a specific order. Pro tip, if you're in Excel, hold the Alt key and press Enter to create a new line within the same row. For departments like automation or Flyrail, I always conform to their preferred vernacular while adding in the notes section any information that I need. Specifically, I always include some sort of description about what the result of that action is. For example, if the cue is line 5 in 5 count, I'll put in the notes chalkboard in. While it's good to think about what information you will eventually need to include on the run sheet, the odds of you starting day one of tech with all of that detail is slim to none. Unless you have an incredibly extensive paper tech process, you probably won't know details like exactly who moves what, or what color spike tape will be used, or the exact verbiage for rail and automation cues. But starting the process with something on the paper will give you a thing to add on to as you get that detail, rather than having to scribble in the margins for a brand new note. As you move through tech and previews, your team and other crew members may start to develop some habits that company members begin to rely on. It is super important that these get added to the run sheet as well, so that way anyone filling in for that track knows to do that so that the show can move smoothly. This might include things that stage managers will automatically do kind of by instinct, such as flashlighting an exit or paging a curtain. Sometimes, like with preset checklists, it can be helpful to include a photo or a diagram to communicate complex scene changes to crew members, especially if there are subtle differences between very similar setups. In the example, I included small diagrams of the turntable setups to differentiate visually between the different scenes. I also like to use colored text to indicate what color a spike mark is. Now, some of my stage management textbooks from college specifically say not to do this, quote, because it'll get photocopied. But these days, photocopiers can pretty much all do color anyway, and as long as you check to make sure that it's still legible in black and white, there's no reason not to. Especially in the regional world, assigning specific tasks to individual crew members will often fall to the stage management team. In fact, a lot of the times, your first time out of the gate, you'll be a non-equity ASM, a PA, or an intern, and you will be one of those crew members. Having an overarching strategy or game plan can make the minutia of assigning these individual tasks much easier. Perhaps you want to have one crew member stationed stage right, one crew member stationed stage left, and then your third crew member as a floater who goes back and forth depending on who needs help. Or maybe if you're the ASM and a crew member all rolled into one, you want to give the most essential items to other crew members, so that way if you need to deal with an emergency on the deck or unexpectedly have to fill in for the calling stage manager, the show can still happen and the most crucial elements are covered. Or maybe you're the only crew member because you're an intern at a small regional company, in which case assigning these individual tasks is super easy because it's all you. Once you input all of your information, it is time to distribute the document. What we've created so far is the master run sheet and will be used for archival purposes and for the ASMs running the deck. However, it may not be ideal for the individual crew members that are actually running the show on a nightly basis. For this, you may want to separate it into different departments to create specialized run sheets. The easiest way to do this is to use the filter function in Excel to select which departments you want included and then print it out that way. If you're using a word processor, you'll have to create copies of the document for each department, and then when you go to update it, you'll have to remember to update all of the departments individually. It works fine, but it's just a hassle. But how do you decide which departments to include in these specialized run sheets? Well, much like deciding who gets cue lights, which we will talk about in a later video, any department that has the potential to kill or seriously injure someone should probably get their own version of the run sheet. In my world, things like automation, fly rail, and effects like pyrotechnics will all get their own run sheets to lessen the chance of any confusion and to lessen cues being taken incorrectly. On the other hand, departments that work on the deck itself may benefit from more information rather than less. For example, the carpenters that are striking the dinner table into the stage right wing probably should know that there is a quick change happening in that same wing at the same time. Likewise, the dresser that is putting a coat on a coat rack should probably know that the turntable is going to start to rotate at the end of this song. For these departments, I err on the side of providing more information rather than less. The good news is, if you're using the filter function in Excel, you can really easily adapt to the feedback that you get from the different departments. So if you provide too much information and it's confusing, you can really quickly make a new version for them that is just their department. The run sheet is perhaps the ultimate test of a stage manager's document design and communication skills. Creating a single piece of paperwork that efficiently disseminates the large amount of information needed to run a show on a nightly basis is no small feat, but you'll have no trouble as long as you listen and implement feedback from your crew members, update it regularly, and for all that is good in the world, include a revision date in your header or footer. Let me know in the comments down below what the weirdest cue or performance ritual that you've ever added to a run sheet has been. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm because it helps me out so much. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.
This snazzy feathered production assistant, as well as other cool stage management merchandise, is now available at kentjamescollins.com/store. Link in the description below.